So how do you kill a Schlieffen? The ship seems absolutely insane and very difficult to take down at close range, just due to the amount of firepower this thing has to offer. Now, let's get the easiest one out of the way first. Catch it with F3 Shima Torps all on its own. Yeah, that's one way to kill it. But realistically, that's not going to happen all the time, since most of the time these Schlieffens are going to have hydro and they're going to be moving a little quicker than full stop. These things don't accelerate that great, but what we really need to know is what are the main weaknesses of this ship. If you haven't played it yet, you're not really going to know. And you can look at it in port, and I think that's really important. You should really look at the armor model. That's what I think is going to give you a great idea on how to counter this ship. It's really important to know these things. For example, 27mm upper bow. That's pretty weak. A lot of stuff overmatches right through that. Of course, there's a 60mm icebreaker that's huge, so don't aim directly for the nose. You want to aim a little bit higher. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that there is a decent sized superstructure, but it's not massive this time. But what you can do is you can see these little angles here. There's some shot trap type stuff here where you can get some nasty full pens, albeit at closer ranges, but that's where the ship is at its most dangerous. So you want to know the weak points to shoot for. The other thing is if this ship is kiting away from you, which you're going to see a lot of Schlieffens want to do. It's not a huge area to hit, but if you're at close range, again, 27mm plating, you can overmatch right through that with a lot of battleships. It's also very easy to HE spam that area. But crucially, the rear turrets have pretty bad firing angles forward just due to the superstructure being in the way. And this little bridge AA mount thing here prevents the 360 turret, which is a huge strength of the Schlieffen. The 360 turret can't fire forward very easily. I'll show you some examples of that in the future, but those are the main weaknesses you want to keep an eye out for, on top of the obvious that are the low HP pool and relatively poor armor. So the torpedo boat destroyers seem to be pretty decent against this ship, assuming they get a decent strike off. But gunboat destroyers can be a little bit of a different story. I certainly don't recommend pushing into and then gunboating a Schlieffen in its secondary range. That's going to be a bad time. Something to be aware of, you can do this in short bursts, I would say. The accuracy on the secondaries does take a little while to kick in, so you have some time before these very accurate secondaries start lasering you from 12 kilometers away. So there is opportunity to do all right. However, keep in mind these secondaries are very good at breaking modules, like your engine, rudder, torpedo tubes, everything that you really want to have access to for dodging shells and maneuvering as a gunboat DD. So I really can't say that that's a great idea to push in and try and gun duel a Schlieffen in its secondary range, but that does seem relatively obvious. So what do you do instead? Well, you either stay outside of its secondary range or you just don't open up on it. You keep it spotted. That's going to be one of the biggest strengths of the Schlieffen, has to be its concealment. But that can be negated relatively easily by a torpedo boat DD who wants to stay in stealth, or a gunboat destroyer who knows when and when not to use their guns. So playing a gunboat DD, you don't always want to be opening up, that's for sure. But countering the Schlieffen can require some teamwork. It's a very dangerous ship up close, so you're going to want to make sure you are trying to spot this thing as much as possible. Since long range, AP, HE, SAP, it really hurts Schlieffen. This is a ship that really struggles at range. It doesn't have the best accuracy on the main guns. They're decent, Battlecruiser-ish dispersion, but nowhere near Thunderer levels. The shells themselves, I really haven't noticed are that good. It's honestly been a little bit of a disappointment. So the secondaries really are where a lot of the power comes from in this ship. So you're going to notice people getting a little too greedy to get their secondaries involved. And that's where you can hit them for half their health pool. Not quite, but 25k is a ton of damage. No turtleback on this thing, so you can take Citadels. It's hard to hit the Citadel, but I think the biggest issue I've had with this ship is overcommitting to a push. Schlieffens want to push in, they want to make use of the secondaries, especially right now since they're fresh and new, but that's probably where they're at their worst a lot of the time. You know, this is assuming random battles. I think in ranked, pushing is a really good option with Schlieffen since there's very few people to actually fire back at you, but random battles is more where I'm looking at when it comes to Schlieffen and countering it. You notice we did basically 0 damage to a broadside Montana at 10 kilometers. It's pretty painful. These guns are rough sometimes. They're okay. They're not bad. But they're rough sometimes. They're not always the best thing in the world. There, again, the Bismarck took no damage. And you'll notice our secondaries aren't firing. Island cover is something a lot of Schlieffens are going to want to use. Isolate for 1v1s. I've said this a ton when trying to brawl it out. You want to get into 1v1 scenarios. You want to limit the people shooting at you. And even use your secondaries from stealth behind islands. That kind of thing is all good options. However, when your secondaries don't fire over an island, you're going to find that Schlieffen players are going to push out to make use of their secondaries because that's a lot of their firepower. And that's where you can really punish them. You notice how much damage I've taken already in this match just because I'm getting too greedy for my secondaries. Better players will learn how to not overpush in this ship, and pushing into a Schlieffen that's kiting, that's really a dangerous Schlieffen. But the pushing ones are far more common, at least right now. We'll see what happens in the future, but countering a kiting Schlieffen basically is just don't push into them. Stay at longer ranges, HE spam them, that kind of thing. Here we have another Montana. That was Lamonti in the last clip that did that nasty salvo to my broadside. And I figured, well, this Montana, I'm not going to go as broadside to. How about that? What if we try an angle? And it's not going to go so well. Like I mentioned earlier, the armor is decent, but it is a weak point. You get that upper bow that can be overmatched, but there's these shot trap locations in the upper belt. So assuming you give even the slightest angle, Montanas, I mean, any accurate battleship really can punish you incredibly hard. We're relatively well angled here. We just ate a 20k salvo. We weren't perfectly angled, I'll admit that for sure, but 20k is a lot on a ship with 76,000 HP. We're going to turn in a little bit more. Again, you can see me using islands pretty reasonably well, I would say, trying to limit the people shooting at me. We do all right damage to the Monty, who's also angled, and this time we're angled enough, and honestly, he kind of aims too low and hits the belt. So the belt armor, relatively strong. So aiming up into the superstructure, aiming up into that upper belt, that's where you want to be. And crucially, I want you to pay attention here to my rear turrets, okay? I can't fire them. This Monty's going to shoot me. He's going to shoot me before I have angles for my rear guns. He gets another 25k into me, and I wasn't even giving him enough angle to shoot my rear guns. That's a huge weakness. That's a massive, massive, massive weakness to this ship. If a Schlieffen is getting all of its guns, all of its turrets at you, you can hit it for a ton of damage, okay? Really, really crucial to know that. Of course, if they're going to angle a little more than that, they have half their firepower from their main guns, right? The secondaries are still going to be painful, but if they're angling so that they aren't going to take that huge hit, they're not going to be as effective. So really important to understand that, and maybe even wait and try and get your salvo timed for when they turn and try and get their rear turrets off. It's going to hurt them a lot. The other thing you're going to notice is a lot of Schlieffens. Again, island usage, it's really smart. But if you're a torpedo boat DD, just chucking torpedoes into gaps, places near islands where you think the Schlieffen might turn to try and take a break and recover some health, that kind of thing. Because again, Schlieffen, it's more of a hit and run ship. It's not a sustained brawler like the GK kind of can be. I don't really think it's that good at it, but GK is a little better at these sustained fights. So Schlieffens want to get into cover and hide every once in a while. Chucking your torpedoes into gaps like that is a great idea as a destroyer. The other thing, keeping the Schlieffen spotted for your smoked up DDs, for your long range cruisers. This Rune is going to do a ton of damage to me with his HE. Prince Rupert coming around the corner. This game is over. This is just an example of Schlieffens getting overwhelmed. I see it a lot where Schlieffens overcommit. They overpush early game, mid game, even late game, and they can't sustain the amount of firepower that a lot of the other tier 10 battleships could, just due to the poor health pool and somewhat worse armor. The fast acting damage controls kind of make up for it, just because you're not going to be burning all that often. But still, HE spamming this ship is a great thing to do. You only have 5 damage controls. That's it. You can only repair 5 times. So, assuming you're getting a lot of HE spam on a target, you can wear through those 5 damage controls relatively quickly, since a ship like this wants to get rid of fires sooner than something like a Kremlin that also has that limitation due to the worse armor and the lower HP pool than a Kremlin. You can't afford to tank as many fires in a ship like this. I know they do percentage damage, but the lower HP you are in a Schlieffen, it's really scary because you don't have that armor that something like a Kremlin does. So you notice, pushing in early game, overcommitting here again. I need to learn to just chill at the beginning. I think a lot of Schlieffen players are going to learn to not push too early on, but we got to respect the HE spam. We got to respect the long range fire. So we're turning away. We respect the torpedoes too. This is a ship that can die very, very quickly if you just push in and not consider where the threats are coming from. I've died a lot very quickly without doing very much at all. I've showed a couple of those already. It's not the easiest ship to play. It's not too difficult either, given that the secondaries do so much damage, but it's not the easiest ship to play ever as well. And staying outside of its secondary range is crucial. This Moskva and Hindenburg play this incredibly well. It annoyed me during the game. I wasn't very happy playing this. These guys are kiting away, spamming HE. Look at the Schlieffen a little bit in front of me. He's going to die very quickly to the long-range HE spam. The DD is, well, they've died, but they've kept us spotted long enough that we've committed into this cap, and we've already taken some damage, especially this Schlieffen in front of me. And the HE spam at longer range is really tough to deal with, since you don't have overmatch on these ships, right? Hindenburg has 30 mil armor. You don't overmatch that. Moskva, you certainly do not. And even if you could, your guns aren't all that impactful. They have, decent enough dispersion, but the alpha damage really holds them back too. You can see less than 13,000 damage out of a gun that's 420 millimeters in size. That's not amazing. Sure, the reload's okay on them, and there's other strengths too, but these ships aren't going to be doing a ton of damage at these longer ranges. So we have to respect this AG spam. That's why I wasn't shooting for so long in this clip. That's what I wanted to show you, is Schlieffens probably aren't going to open up if they don't have to. And forcing them to push into bad situations like this is how you're going to deal with them. Don't push into them. Force them to commit into something. This Moskva may seem useless. You might think, wow, he's on the B line going for the A line already. But he's actually doing a great job of countering the Schlieffens on this flank on my team. Because how are we going to deal with him? We can't. We can't deal with him without trying to get closer. And we do need to push, because at this point, our team has completely lost the C flank. We're forced into this push here. That's what's crucial, is forcing a Schlieffen into a push, keeping them spotted with a DD, planes, different things like that, and just killing them very quickly with HE or some AP or a combination of both. You can do some decent damage to Schlieffens, of course, up close. Just know that there's the torpedoes and the secondaries. They're going to kill you relatively quickly. If you see a teammate pushing into a Schlieffen and trying to kill them, you should probably open up and try and help. That's something I've noticed a lot, is as soon as I get into a situation in my Schlieffen where multiple ships are shooting at me, even in close range, I can still die relatively quickly, since the secondaries are really only able to focus one target at a time. Yes, they can shoot off both sides, but the other side isn't all that accurate, right? You're really focusing one target at a time. So back to our earlier example with gunboat destroyers. If you see a Schlieffen focusing on killing a cruiser, a different destroyer, or a battleship, and their secondaries are focused there, you could probably open up and try and get some decent damage in. You can see how much damage this Moskva is doing to me. I'm even pointing him out with my mouse. I wasn't happy, but this Moskva showed how to kill Schlieffens very well. He did a great job on the first Schlieffen, and he did a great job killing me as well, or helping get me killed at least as well. Last example, I'm not in a Schlieffen here. I'm in a Montana. But look at the map. There's a Schlieffen and an Alaska on the 9 line with basically no opposition. What's the Schlieffen gonna do? He's probably gonna push in. So let's go try and meet him and see if we can make use of some of these tips I've given. And while this is looking like a juicy shot, this isn't a Monty video, so maybe I'll show you this game a little later. It went pretty well. I've been having a lot of fun with Monty, but this is a video about how to counter Schlieffen, so we're gonna focus on that just for now. And remember what I said? Schlieffen struggles to get all of his turrets off. He got greedy trying to get his turrets off at the rune. We can punish him for that. We did a huge chunk of damage in there to him. This is massive, and it hurts Schlieffen players so much. Being on half health in a push versus being on 80% health, it's a huge change to what you're capable of doing and what my team is capable of in killing him, right? It's gigantic amounts of damage that you can do to these Schlieffens, and it's maybe not as much from a pure numbers sense, but the percentage of his health you do is way more, since he has so much less health to begin with. So playing a Montana, playing a more normal battleship, play it more passive. You can see how passive I'm playing in this game. I'm not pushing aggressively. I'm trying to get myself into positions to get shots on broadside ships, and I'm not wanting to overcommit too soon. And the Schlieffen overcommitted, much like I did in a lot of these clips. That's how you deal with a Schlieffen. You don't push into them. You wait for them to commit to a bad push. You force them to commit to bad situations and try to punish them when they try and do these things. It's not too difficult, but of course, if the Schlieffen player is playing well, they're probably not going to get themselves into those kind of bad situations. So I hope this helped you deal with Schlieffens a little better. They're a very strong ship, but they're very weak in specific areas that you can definitely exploit. All it takes is maybe a bit of teamwork with spotting and some long-range accurate firepower. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.